Welcome to another in our series of questions Jesus asked. Our question today comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 16, verse 11. Who will entrust to you the true riches? To give our question its context, we'll be reading verses 1 through 13 of Luke, chapter 16. He also said to the disciples, "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. And he called him and said to him, 'What is this that I hear of you? Turn in the account of your management, for you can no longer be manager.' And the manager said to himself, 'What shall I do, since my master is taking the management away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I've decided what to do so that when I am removed from management, people may receive me into their houses.' So summoning his master's debtors one by one, he said to the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' He said, 100 measures of oil.' He said to him, 'Take your bill, sit down quickly, and write 50. Then he said to another, 'And how much do you owe?' He said, 100 measures of wheat.' He said to him, 'Take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into the eternal dwellings. One who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust to you the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money." Here's something you might find interesting. It's entitled, "How to Raise a Spoiled Brat." Never tell your child no. Always give your child what they want. Always make excuses for your child's bad behavior. Always give in to whining and begging and temper tantrums. Let your child call you names without consequences. Let your child disrespect authorities without consequences. Ignore bad behavior. Never require your child to do chores. Don't supervise your child. Don't hold your child accountable. Make your child the center of the world. I've compiled these from several sources. I don't want you to think that these are my own. Many of these sources are in the area of psychology, counseling, and parental advisors. Certain words were very common among the writers: accountability, responsibility, consequences. Mr. Simmons was one of my junior high school teachers. He taught agricultural sciences. How shall I describe him? Old school, no nonsense. We knew what to expect in every class. We knew that if we acted out, there would be consequences, immediate and fair. He wasn't afraid to raise his voice occasionally. He wasn't shy about giving out praise either. He expected, yes, demanded certain behavior. He had standards that he taught by. One phrase I heard him use more than once was, "I have more respect for a bank robber who would try to steal $1 million than a student who would cheat on a test." I'm not sure at the time that I grasped all of what Mr. Simmons was telling us. And while I know he wasn't advocating bank robbery as a way of gaining respect, I knew the message he was trying to get across nonetheless. It was important for us to learn the lesson of honor and honesty and integrity there in our early years. There would be some who would cheat, and I didn't realize at the time the cost of such behavior. But if a child was corrected and caught in time, chances are they would learn the true value of virtue and how they could be entrusted by others. Our question today comes from a parable that is arguably one of the most difficult to understand. Yet the overall message is far from difficult. That is the beauty of this parable. Jesus gives the immediate application so that we are not left to wonder at the meaning. The context of this, in actuality, is given in the verse following the parable in Luke 16, verse 14. The Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all these things, and they ridiculed him. However, the context of this parable goes beyond money and answers to that which the heart treasures. And that's what Jesus said and taught in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Two questions are given back to back here and are symbiotic in nature, for their relationship is nearly identical. The simple explanation to these two questions is the same as which we teach a child. Honesty is the best policy, for in this you will be trusted as a good steward later. Now that's a lot for a child to grasp, but it is a lesson that is reinforced day in and day out by those who are entrusted with their upbringing, whether it be parents, teachers, or others in position of authority in their lives. In an earthly way, we grasp the question in verse 11. Think about some of the questions one is required to answer on job applications. If you're going to be entrusted with handling finances, they want to know if you've ever been convicted of robbing a bank or embezzlement. If you're going to be in a position of watching young children, they want to know if you've ever been convicted of molesting children. Verse 12 is one that, in all likelihood, cannot be understood by those who are of the flesh. Consider what Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 2:11. For who knows a person's thoughts except the spirit of that person which is in him? So also no one comprehends the thoughts of God except the Spirit of God. And further, Paul explains in chapter 2, verse 14, the natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him, and he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. The mind of the flesh may believe that all they possess is theirs. The reality is, all that we possess is only on loan. The spiritual person understands this and lives their lives accordingly. Our car, our house, our golf clubs, our cell phones, they may have our name on them as to that of ownership here on earth, but it belongs to the Lord nonetheless. As to that which is our own, what shall we possess that is our own? Consider what Jesus told Peter and the disciples in Matthew chapter 19 and verse 29. And everyone who has left houses, or brothers or sisters, or father or mother, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, will receive 100-fold and will inherit eternal life. However, where and what one shall be eternally ultimately depends upon who and what is their master in this life. Who is your master in this life? And Lord willing, let's meet here again tomorrow and consider another of the questions Jesus asked.